Hi, everybody. Time for the Todd Cook Show. With me, Todd Cook. Half hour of entertainment. So stay tuned. You're gonna like it. Hi everybody, I am Todd Cook, and I'm glad you've decided to join me here. I'm broadcasting live from my garage in Wichita, Kansas. And what a thrill it is to know that there are people out here and out there all over cyberspace listening to my little podcast here, the Todd Cook Show. And for those of you who have listened before, you might have already realized that today is going to be a little different than any episode I've ever had before. You're probably wondering, why is the introduction to the show so much different than it normally is? Well, the reason for that is simple. My computer is at Best Buy getting repaired. And all the music that I have for this program, all the sound effects that I have for this program, the commercials I have, it's all on that computer. And so I do not have that computer with me, and so I'm going to have to ad-lib. Right now, believe it or not, I am standing up with my guitar in my hand, and I'm going to provide some music for you as the show goes on. This is not originally how I intended it, but if I don't have my computer with me, I got to do what I got to do. And lesser podcasters would have just canceled the show. Podcasters that are less dedicated to their craft, podcasters that don't care as much about their audience as I do, they would have just canceled the show. They would have just said, put a message up on the website that says, due to technical difficulties, there's not going to be a show this week. But not me. Oh no, not me. Good old Todd Cook. I am right here with you to rain, hail, sleet, or snow. The podcast must go. And don't actually hold me to that, because I live here in Wichita, Kansas, and we get a lot of bad weather. And, it does rain and hails and sleets and snows here quite frequently, along with tornadoes and stuff. And so if, by some chance, the power was to go out, I would not be able to do a podcast. No matter how much I want to, how much I might try to, it just would not happen. So most cases I'm going to be here, but there could possibly be some cases that I might not be able to make it. But I am here today. Even though I don't have my computer with me, I'm here today. You want to stick around on this show? I'm going to talk about my Jiggy Jaguar experience. I went up to Hutchinson, Kansas, and set in for an episode of the Jiggy Jaguar show. Jiggy Jaguar is a radio personality from back in the day who is now currently doing internet radio, and he's on 50 different stations all across the country. And I went up there and set in with him for a full over 2 hours. I think it was almost 3 hours that I was in the studio with him and had a great time. I'm going to tell you all about that in just a few moments. And then normally I always play music, by somebody, but since I don't have my computer and that's where all my music is, and I thought about putting some music onto my wife's computer and bringing it out here and getting that all arranged, but I didn't want to mess up her computer by putting stuff on there, and cluttering it up a little bit. She has her computer set up the way she likes it, and I didn't want to take a chance of messing stuff up, and it would take quite a while to get some of the stuff that I had on my computer, from online and stuff, and getting it onto her computer so I could use it for this program. So I decided not to do that. So coming up, instead of music by somebody else, I'm just going to play you something live right here in the studio. Those of you out there who know me know I'm in a band here. I'm going to do a song that I wrote for you coming up at the very end of this program. And also, I got a big announcement, a really big announcement. Nothing to do with this podcast, something more on a personal note. But a big announcement that's going to be coming up at the end of the show as well. You don't want to miss that, so stay tuned for that. First, I guess I could tell you how my computer got broke. If you listen to this program, a few weeks back, I had my dog in here, and I tried to do an interview with him. But every time I'd stick my microphone in his face, he'd do nothing but snore into the mic. But anyway, he's a big basset hound, and he's needless to say, he's not real graceful. But I was sitting with my computer on my end table next to my recliner, and I'm sitting there in a recliner, and I'm watching TV, turning channel, and I had just enough of a gap between the table and the recliner. Normally the table is probably right up against the arm of the recliner, but this particular day, for whatever reason, there was just enough of a gap there between the table and the recliner that my dog was able to be underneath the table and look up between the table and the recliner and see me. And my dog is one of those dogs that all you have to do is give him the slightest bit of attention and he goes crazy. Any time that he's not getting attention, all he does is lay around wondering why people aren't paying attention to him. Or he's sleeping, one of the two. He likes to sleep quite a bit too. But he's sitting there underneath the table, looking up at me between the table and the arm of the recliner. And I made the mistake of making eye contact with him. That's all I did. I just made eye contact with him. And that was enough for him to think, obviously he wants me to jump up there. So he tried to jump up between the table and the recliner and knocked the table over with my computer on it that was plugged in at the time, charging. And thus, the little AC or DC adapter or plug, the power source thing, had to be repaired. It actually worked for a little while. At first, probably a month or so, I just had to kind of wiggle it around and get it to where it would take charge. But then it stopped working altogether. And so I took it in the Best Buy, and they said that it would be, 3 or 4 days. So I took it in like Saturday and hoped, by the middle of this week it'd be done. But apparently the 3 or 4 days means it'll be 3 or 4 days from the time that they look at it until it is finally done. The problem is it seemed to take them a week before they finally got around to even looking at it. But I got the call a couple days ago. It must have been Thursday or Friday. I got the call and they said that what the problem was exactly what I knew the problem was, and that it was nothing more than that. And they're going to have to take the time to fix it now. So hopefully by the next podcast that I do, I will have my computer back. And hopefully that dog will not knock it off the table again and break it. All right. Now this is a time where normally I'd play a little commercial. And I'm still going to. We say, well, how can you play a commercial when you don't have your computer? You said everything that you had was right there on that computer. Well, I'm going to ad-lib this little commercial for you right now. See, I got my guitar. See? I proved it. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have my guitar. And I was actually going to set this guitar down for a little while, or through the rest of the show, and not pick it back up until I needed it, like for this commercial. And at the end of the show, I'm going to do a song for you. I was just going to, set it down and pick it back up when I needed it. But I decided here at the last minute that I'm going to just keep it strapped over my shoulder. I'm in a band and I have to have it over my shoulder for over an hour at a time, anytime we have a gig for sure, before I take any breaks. So I'm just going to keep it right here for the entire show. And it's kind of weird. I'm standing up here and the microphone is a little ways away. I think I got the balance just right for the volume and everything. But I'm going to do a commercial for you. A live commercial while playing the guitar. That's because I am Todd Cook and I can do this stuff. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to power through and do the show just like I normally would. It might not come across just like it normally would, but everything's going to be done just like it normally would be done here on the Todd Cook Show. So here's my commercial. Do you like to go and listen to live music, but you don't like the bar scene? Well, there's a place where you can go and listen to that live music and not have to worry about the loud noise of the bar. That place is called The Kiln. It's on the corner of Douglas and Hillside in Wichita. Go there on Friday or Saturday nights and listen to that music. Once again, it's called The Kiln. It's on the corner of Hillside and Douglas in Wichita, Kansas. They got great food and great music. So go to The Kiln, where they are always glad that you came. And there you go. Now see, that might not have been the best commercial in the world, but that's the beauty of this program. I call it a small talk podcast because I don't talk about anything real serious, and I don't take myself very serious at all at any given time. So this is a very unique episode of the Todd Cook Show. I hope you like that. My chord progression got off there a little bit, but I never rehearsed, didn't practice that. I just did it on the fly. That's the best I can do. So The Kiln, corner of Hillside and Douglas, Wichita, Kansas, Friday and Saturday night, live music, good food, no alcohol. So bring the kids. All right. Now I want to tell you about the Jiggy Jaguar experience that I had. Like I said, Jiggy Jaguar is a former radio guy who's doing internet radio now. And he's up in Hutchinson, Kansas, and I'm down in Wichita, Kansas. And so I had to drive up there. And it's a little bit of a drive. I think it took me about an hour to get there. And by the way, whoever in Hutchinson, Kansas is in charge of plowing the streets up there, listen, the reason that you plow the roads is to get the snow off of the roads, not to pile it up in the middle of the intersections. It was crazy. You get down there, and I don't know where I'm going exactly. I'd never been to Hutchinson. Well, I guess I'd been there before, but somebody else was driving. This is the first time I was on my own in Hutchinson. Don't know exactly where to go. I got the address and directions, and at some point I need to turn, and I come up to get into the turn lane, and I can't get in the turn lane because there's a huge pile of snow. And it seems like, if I remember correctly, the town that I was from in Indiana, Warsaw, Indiana, they used to do that as well, where for some reason they plow the snow, and I guess that's the easiest way to do it, is just to put it in the intersection and make people drive around it. But when you're in a new town and you're trying to find a place that you've never been to before, the last thing I needed was have big piles of snow blocking my way. So once again, the point of plowing the roads is to get the snow off of the roads, not just to pile it up somewhere else. It was crazy. But anyway, I get there, I make a left turn, a right turn, however, and I find the intersection, the address, and I check a couple different times to make sure I have it right. I park my car, and I start heading up, and I find the place. I go inside, knock on the door, and there Jiggy is. He welcomes me in, shakes my hand, and we're off. And I find out later that we have all kinds of people lined up to call into the show through Skype, and another in-studio guest that was going to be showing up shortly. So I sat down there and got my mic and got ready, and a few moments later, next thing I know, we were on the air, and it was a really neat experience. We had multiple guests, and like I said, they were calling in from Skype. At least some of them was, and I believe the very first one that we tried to get on Skype, we had all kinds of technical difficulties that were not able to do it. But we did finally. And it was funny, too, because Jiggy was getting really frustrated with Skype and saying it doesn't work for what it's supposed to be. We're not using it for what it's supposed to be used for, and it doesn't work right half the time. So he was getting kind of frustrated with the whole idea. But at some point, I told him, I said, with my little podcast and I'm doing it in my garage, I'd love to have the opportunity to try to get somebody on Skype. But I can't even do that yet. Maybe somewhere down the road I'll be able to do that, have somebody call in through Skype. And I got an idea just to be able to take phone calls, through my phone as well. We'll see what happens, maybe someday. But I just thought it was neat just to be able to have the opportunity to get that. I looked around and saw the different computers he had and the wires and everything. And I said, I hope someday my podcast is big enough that I can have all these wires all over the place and different computers as well. And he looked at me, he said, no, you don't. And no, you don't. But anyway, we had a good time. We had an actress call all the way from Hollywood. And there we are in snowy Wichita, Kansas. And I'm talking on the phone with somebody from Hollywood. And, I told her I was really jealous just about the weather out there. I like everything about Wichita except for the weather. And on that particular day, it was pretty snowy and wet and cold. And then we had a lady who was a director. And I can't remember the actress's name. Her name was Holly something. I can't remember her name. I probably should have wrote that down. But she's got some projects coming up. And then we talked to a director of a new movie that's going to be coming out called Angel One Eye. And her name was, and I'm going to try to get this right, but her name was Seraphim Ward. Seraphim Ward. And she's the director of Angel One Eye. And it's a kind of a horror movie that's coming out. And she was really interesting. She went through the whole process of how she was making this movie, and how when she originally made the movie, she thought it'd end up going straight to DVD, but the executives at the movie studios watched it and said, no, this is good enough. We want to put this on the big screen. And so that'll be coming out sometime. I can't remember when she said, but you can look it up online. Angel One Eye. It sounded like a good movie. At the end of that interview, I remember I nominated her for the guest of the day. She was really interesting. Told about the process that she went through and everything, and how she's a very hands-on person. So Seraphim Ward, and the movie's called Angel One Eye. And then we had a doctor who wrote a book about how to survive the upcoming new healthcare reform that's going to be taking place here before too long. And he was really interesting. He seemed like a good guy, but at some point I realized this guy really likes to talk. And the chances of him listening to this podcast are slim to none, and probably a lot closer to none. So, but like I said, a good guy, but he likes to talk. I could tell that when he's not being a doctor or writing books, he's probably giving lectures, because he was like a college professor that just did not know when to stop. We asked him one question, and he'd go on for quite a while, which is better than the alternative, which would be ask somebody a question, have them give you a one-word answer, and then have to think of another question. But at some point, he mentioned that he was Michael Landon's doctor. And if any of you ever watched the TV show Little House on the Prairie, you know who Michael Landon was. And that was one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid. One of the few shows that my parents liked as well as I did. And so I wanted to ask him about Michael Landon. What was Michael Landon like? But after he mentioned Michael Landon, he went on for another 10 minutes, it seemed like. And I was sitting there, and I just didn't want to hear him talk anymore. So I wasn't about to ask him about Michael Landon, as intriguing as it was. Have somebody there who was Michael Landon's doctor, before he died. That would have been pretty neat. But yeah, he was a talker, good guy and all. And then at the end of the show, since I'm an aspiring podcaster, I'm not expiring yet. I'm aspiring podcaster. Jiggy thought he'd let me take over the last 10 minutes of the show. And I had to interview the other guest that was in the studio, and his name was Mr. Chaz. Mr. Chaz was a rapper. And if you guys know me, I'm not much of a rap guy. I'm not into rap much. I'm not into the hip-hop scene at all. And but that's okay. And so I had this guy that I just met, an hour or so before, and I had to interview him about a subject that I don't know much about at all. I am a music guy. I do like music. I'm in a band, but my band's got a banjo in it. and that was something else too. We had a band that we interviewed from Canada, a death metal band from Canada. And I asked them, but they said they didn't have a banjo in their band either. But anyway, so I had to talk to this rap guy, Mr. Chaz, really nice guy, had a good time. And but yeah, for the last 10 minutes, it was me interviewing Mr. Chaz and asking him about his music and about his behind the scenes producing that he does, as well as, on the other side of the microphone. And it went well. So I was pretty happy about that. And I learned about myself that if the spotlight is on, because usually I'm out here doing this podcast like I am right now, and there's nobody else around. It's just me. There's really no pressure. But this time there was, 3 other people in the studio, and one guy in particular who'd been doing the radio thing for quite a while. And so there was a little bit of pressure put on me to handle this. I had no idea I was going to be doing it. And suddenly there it was, and it was my chance, and the microphone was on. And if anything, I learned about myself one thing, that if the pressure is on, at the very least, I won't freeze up. I don't know how good of an interview I could do in that situation, but I didn't freeze up, and I asked good interviews, and Mr. Chaz complimented me, and I complimented him, and had a great time on the Jiggy Jaguar show. And if you want to look him up on Google, jiggyjaguar.com and kjagradio.com as well. And you can listen to his program. He goes live. I don't go live yet, but if the opportunity comes up, I would like to do that. So that's all about the Jiggy Jaguar experience. All right, what is next? Let me see here. I'm looking at my notes. There was something else I want to talk about. Oh, yes. As well as the Jiggy Jaguar experience went, there was one thing that I wish I could have done a little better, and that was answering the very first question that he asked me. He asked me how I got into podcasting, and instead of telling him how I got into podcasting, my answer was more along the lines of when I got into podcasting. And so now I want to take a little time now. Maybe he'll listen to this. I'll send him an email and let him know that I talked about it, and we'll go from there. But the way I got into podcasting is like this. I can remember in high school, it must have been during the summer because it was during the day, and school wasn't going on. I was probably a junior or a senior, and I can remember laying on my bed on a lazy day with nothing to do, and picking up my alarm clock radio, which I had never used for anything other than to wake me up. And I can't believe that clock lasted me as long as it did. I believe I had it all the way through 7th grade, all the way up until I graduated from high school. That was the one and only clock radio I ever had. I remember the snooze button was like a flap, and it broke off because I had hit the snooze button so much. And I remember at one point I actually set the alarm on the other side of the room where my feet had to hit the floor, had to take a few steps to shut it off, hoping that this would let me get out of bed sooner. But after it worked for a little while, but eventually I'd crawl across the floor, hit the snooze, and then crawl back into bed anyway. I'm getting off track. But anyway, I remember sitting there one day and listening to the radio, and I couldn't find any music or whatever. I'm just flipping around. I don't know what I'm looking for. And at some point, I hear a voice talking. And it was coming in nice and clear, which very few channels seem to do. And so I stopped it right there, and I started listening. And after a while, he was talking about politics and stuff, to some degree at least. And at that age especially, I really didn't care about that. But it seemed interesting to me. It seemed like I was learning something. And looking back on it now, I realize I probably wasn't learning as much as I thought, or at least not learning the right stuff. But it seemed educational, but yet very, very entertaining to me. And I never heard anything like it before. And I remember thinking, okay, when is this guy going to start playing the next, hit song by Billy Joel? Maybe after the next commercial break, he's going to play a song. Because that's all I'd heard on radio was somebody would talk briefly and then play a song. I'd heard, Paul Harvey and, commentary like that, but never really talk radio. And I started getting into it. And I remember the next day I found it again. And that guy happened to be Rush Limbaugh. And I don't listen to him anymore. I did quite a bit back then. But like I said, it was nothing to do with politics. It was entertainment for me. You listen to music radio, you listen to 10 songs that you don't know or you don't like, and then you finally hear one song that you do like, and then you got to sit through another 10 songs. And I would listen at work a lot, and music would become almost just white noise to me. Because, like I said, you don't have to really listen that close to music to enjoy it. It's kind of just in the background, and eventually not only would it be in the background, but be way in the background for me, and it just didn't seem to help time go faster, which is why I was listening, my crappy job that I had in Indiana. But then I started listening to talk radio, and with talk radio, at the very least, it seemed like I was listening to the conversations they were having and getting interested in it to some degree, and so it just made time go faster, and it got to the point where I would listen to something every day. I started finding new stuff to listen to. There was local things I would listen to. There were national broadcasts that I'd listen to. And it got to the point where, an 8-hour shift at work, I'd go through 3 or 4 different programs, sometimes on the same station. Sometimes I'd have to change stations to find who I wanted to listen to. And I'd listen to everything from politics to sports talk, any kind of talk. I loved it. And as time went by, I started getting a little frustrated. And a few years back, probably whenever the Octomom came out, anybody can remember when that is, when the Octomom came out and was really popular, I started getting tired of hearing everybody talk about the Octomom. I started realizing I didn't like talking about pop culture or listening to people talk about pop culture or a TV show or movies or stuff. I just liked the small talk that they would do in between. And I remember at one point when the Octomom story broke, listening to somebody, and they spent like a half hour on their show talking about the Octomom. And I didn't want to hear it anymore. So I turned the channel. And the next station I went to, the next program I was listening to, guess what? They were talking about the Octomom again. And then I'd go, and I think at this point I was actually downloading some stuff offline. And so I had all kinds of options to listen to. And once again, the next station I went to, everybody was talking about the Octomom. I didn't care about the Octomom. I did not care about the Octomom. And to this day, when stories like that just don't interest me for whatever reason. So, long story short, at some point, I started hearing more and more of these radio programs, these talk shows, and I would like certain aspects of the shows, and other aspects I wouldn't like as much. And then shortly after I moved to Wichita, I heard a program called The Don and Mike Show. Don Geronimo and Mike O'Mara. Mike and Don are both still around doing their own thing now separately, but they used to be a team, The Don and Mike Show. And that show was different than anything I'd ever heard. They weren't talking about politics. They weren't talking about sports. They weren't talking about pop culture. They were just talking. They did one bit. It was called porch sitting, where they would just literally go outside the studio and sit down and just start talking like they were friends. Not like there was a microphone, not like they were trying to entertain people. They just started talking. And for whatever reason, maybe it's my personality, I'm just a different cat. I loved it. Best bit I ever heard my entire life. All the radio stations, all the different shows I listened to, that was the best bit I'd ever heard. Loved it. And so at some point, I started hearing more and more of these radio stations, these programs saying, by the way, if you didn't catch an episode of this show, you can always go online and download it and listen to it anytime you want. And a little bell rang in my head, and I said, shoot, I don't have to be on the radio. Why can't I just upload something straight up to the internet and go from there? And thus, the Todd Cook Show was born. I hope that wasn't too boring, but I wish I would have gave Jiggy a little better answer when he asked that question. But other than that, everything else went great. I had a great time there. It was a great experience. JiggyJaguar.com, KJAG.com as well. All right, I said I had a big announcement, but our song coming up, but I'm going to save the song for later, and I'm going to do the big announcement right now. And like I said, this has nothing to do with radio. I think I said that, or nothing to do with this podcast. This is about my personal life. I just found out, me and my wife found out a couple days ago, that we are expecting our third baby. And I am really excited about that. We had just got to the point where we were getting ready to go to the doctor and have the doctor help us along a little bit. And suddenly, it's happened. So the baby is coming, and we're thrilled. I have a 6-year-old son and a 2-year-old son. And I don't mind saying, me and my wife would both like to have a girl, especially my wife. But, of course, all we want is, it's a cliche now, but all we want is a healthy baby. That'd be great. And so whether it's a girl or if I get the, my 3 sons, that'll be great too. And we're really excited about that. I told my 6-year-old about it, and, said 9 months from now, you're going to have another little brother or sister. And he actually said he wanted a sister too. So, at some point he's like, how long did you say? 19 years? I said, no, not 19 years, just 9 months. Then I told him, I go, about the time that the summer comes around and you have a long break from school, and right about the time you're ready to go back to school, it should be getting pretty close. And then later, me and my wife were talking, and was like, well, Johnny, by the time the baby is your age, by the time the baby's 6, you'll be a teenager. And that seemed kind of neat at the time, but then I thought about it, I was like, holy cow, I'm getting old. But yeah, so we're thrilled. Sometime late summer or early fall, we're going to have us another one, and it's great. And I'm going to end the show with this song right here that I wrote. Normally I play something from my computer, but my computer's not here, so you're going to have to be satisfied with a song that I wrote for you. And if this doesn't turn out real good with the volume-wise and stuff, I might have to re-record it, and I'll just edit it on at the end of the program here. I probably shouldn't have even told you that. I could have done it, and you would have never known. But I'm going to try to play a song live for you. And the reason I picked this song is because it's a song that I wrote. It's simply about how I feel about my wife and my family. It's called Big Dreams. This whole world can get us down and cannot touch our dreams. If you're gonna dream, you might as well dream big. You want a river, you don't want a stream. And you have made my dreams come true. I would like to do the same for you. I will climb and fight with all my might. I want a paradise for you. Yes, I want a paradise for you. I don't care how long it takes, I've got the rest of my life. Bailey, I'll lasso the moon. I know you would like that a lot. If there's gold at the end of the rainbow, just imagine what is on the top. Just imagine what is on the top. My favorite word is eventually. I want it all to come true. And I no longer dream for myself. All of my dreams are for you. And you never asked for diamonds or gold. I would get them for you anyway. A castle on a cloud with an ocean view. It's gonna be ours someday. Yes, it's gonna be ours someday. And I don't care how long it takes. I've got the rest of my life. And it might be a pipe dream, but dreaming sure is nice. Like George Bailey, I'll lasso the moon. I know you would like that a lot. If there's gold at the end of the rainbow, just imagine what is on the top. Just imagine what is on the top. And I don't care how long it takes. I've got the rest of my life. And it might be a pipe dream, but dreaming sure is nice. Like George Bailey, I'll lasso the moon. I know you would like that a lot. If there's gold at the end of the rainbow, just imagine what is on the top. Just imagine what is on the top. And this old world can get us down. It cannot touch our dreams. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this very special edition of the Todd Cook Show, an all-acoustic edition of the Todd Cook Show. Tune in next week, and I'll do the talking.